All right. Good evening, parents. I want to start off right away with thanking our entertainment tonight. This is Jacob Mendoza and Sagun Beneganti, and they are both members of our Grafton Middle School band. Thank you, guys. I want to thank you all for coming out tonight to our Parent University. We are going to make sure that you leave here feeling a lot smarter about the whole registration process for your rising sixth graders. I have actually, my name first of all is Jen Richardson. I'm the counseling director here. This is my first year at Grafton, and I have actually spent a lot of time on the other end of this whole process. I was the counselor at Tab Elementary School. So I did spend a lot of time getting the fifth graders ready to transition to middle school. I did some guidance lessons with them. We went over their schedule and how to open a lock. You know, I kind of got them used to the idea that they won't just have one teacher, they'll have many teachers. They're going to meet new kids from other schools, make new friends. And, you know, I got them used to the idea that they would not have recess anymore. So it was exciting and actually a lot of fun for me in August when I was at the Clipper Camp, which we are going to do, of course, again this year. And I got to see all of the sixth graders come in through the front doors with very nervous looks on their faces. But as they left, they were smiling. And I just want to assure all you parents, because I know you're probably a little anxious as well, that your kids are going to be fine. They're going to have a great experience here at Grafton. This is a great school. We have great teachers. We have helpful, supportive staff and administrators. So I'm going to introduce some of those people right now. First of all, I'll introduce my counseling team. In the back is Stephanie Coble, and she is the other full-time counselor along with me. And then right over here is Mrs. San Lorenzo, and she is the sixth grade counselor, so she's going to be working with your students next year. She is new as well to Grafton this year. Right next to Mrs. San Lorenzo is Mrs. Wallace, and she is one of our assistant principals. She's also new to Grafton this year. And then I'm very excited to introduce our new principal, Mrs. Anthony.
Hello everyone, how are you tonight? Great. So Mrs. Wallace, some of you might remember her from last year. How many of you all remember Mrs. Wallace? Awesome. Great. Because she's coming from Grafton Bethel Elementary, so while she's new to middle school, she will know a lot of your families here, so that's really going to help with the transition, so I'm excited about that. I am new to Grafton Middle School. I started this year, January 2nd, right after the holiday. So the former principal that was here, he was promoted to Tab High School, and then I was promoted here. I'm coming from York High School. I was the assistant principal there. So many years ago, back in 2004, I had a friend that worked at Grafton Middle School. And so I was in Hampton City Schools at the time, and she would tell me how great Grafton Middle School was and all these great things that they were doing. And so I would sit at my desk during my lunch period, and I would actually look on Grafton Middle School's website and wonder what this school was like. And I thought, man, this seems really cool to work in York County. Many years later, in 2010, I was hired at York High School, and I became an assistant principal. And now I'm here at Grafton Middle School as the principal. So this is really like a dream come true to me. Every day is amazing. And so they ask me, how's it going? How do you like your new job? And I say, my job is my Disney, because I am loving every day. So your students are going to be coming to Grafton Middle School while I still have this passion and this fire. And I'm sure it's going to go on for the next 10 years, but we know it'll be here in September. And so I'm very excited to see you all here tonight, and I'm very excited to meet you all. And I'll be around afterwards to say hello if you are interested in speaking to me more. But we have a great presentation tonight. It's going to give you a lot of information that you need as you transition to middle school. So thank you for coming.
Good evening. I'm Laura San Lorenzo, and I will be your student's counselor next year for the 6th grade year. As Ms. Richardson said, I'm also new to the school. Not to get you nervous that there's a whole bunch of rookies at the helm here. I am coming from 4 years at Peninsula Catholic High School, where I was the underclassman counselor, and so I have a lot of experience with helping people with that transition piece. So I was the counselor for 8th, 9th, and 10th. Also a very important bridge in young people's lives. I'm really pleased to see such a wonderful turnout here tonight, this evening. We appreciate how busy and full life gets with young children. As a parent myself, I'm also an educator. I know that your attendance here tonight is really the first step towards a successful transition to middle school. I know that you have each held your precious children tightly wrapped in a safety net, and I want you to know that that safety net is going to still be in place in middle school. We're going to work with you to ease it out a little bit, and know that we're here to make sure that there are no people that fall through any cracks, because we've got your child's best interest at mind, and we're a really fabulous team. I'm so thrilled to be working in York County Schools again, because I was a teacher actually for 13 years at York Middle, so it's just a great place to be. It sets the standard around here for education, so I think you should be really pleased that your child is going to be at Grafton Middle School. It's an exciting time. I know it's a little bit of a scary time for you, especially if this is your oldest child. Again, just know that we're here and we really do work to make it a seamless transition. And an important part of that is your partnership. So we really value that, and we look forward to getting to know you and your student and your family and working with you for a successful middle school experience. So middle school is a time of growth for all students. It's a time of physical growth, emotional growth, social growth, and educational growth. It's a real big time of transition, and we're going to talk tonight about some of the different things that they're going to have to learn to get used to. Probably the biggest thing is that they're not going to have just one teacher. They're going to have to learn to balance 4, 5, 6 different teachers, different teaching styles, personalities. Moving from class to class is definitely a challenge for some kids who are used to staying in one place all day. So there's an increase in personal responsibility onto the student, and we work hard to scaffold that responsibility gradually, putting those new responsibilities and new roles in place. We don't just put it out there. The 6th grade is very different than the 8th grade here. One of the biggest tools that you're going to want to make sure that your child uses is the agenda. Not sure if that's up there, but the old-fashioned paper agenda that everybody's issued is a fantastic tool for making your child be responsible and keeping organized, and it's a great tool, in fact, for communicating. If you're not sure what's going on at school and you want to see the agenda, every teacher in 6th grade posts the homework, posts things that are coming up on their board, and so, writing that down and keeping that is a really big piece. We do have a learning management tool called Aspen, which I'm sure you're familiar with if you're in York County Schools. You may be using it primarily for checking grades once in a while, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about all the wonderful resources that Aspen provides for you as a parent. Some of our students, some of our teachers use technology in terms of personal technology, so sometimes your child will be able to bring their technology device to class for instructional purposes. Most of the time that's very controlled, and cell phones are to stay in the locker unless there's ahead of time, a teacher will say, we're going to be using our technology devices, and so you're allowed to bring them. If they do bring them to school, which I know that many of you have given your children cell phones, they're to stay in their lockers, they're not allowed to come to class, they're not allowed to go to the cafeteria. Students will have an opportunity to join after-school clubs, activities, they'll have a chance to go to school dances, and we really do encourage your child to get involved in some activities to make middle school a richer experience, not just about the books and the core classes. Since we're fed by 4 elementary schools, you'll have a chance to make new friends, and you'll have a chance to maintain your old friends. So there's a lot of stuff going on socially. In terms of the nuts and bolts of our schedule, you may see something up there that says AV block schedule. That's another thing that's a really big change for kids. They have different classes on different days. So we have A days and we have B days. And I'm going to show you an example of the schedule later in my presentation. Classes are 90-minute blocks. There are 4 90-minute blocks per day. Math meets every day and English meets every day. And history, science, and the electives rotate on the AV schedule, but I'll give you a visual for that in a few minutes. We're trying to encourage academic maturity in our students, so there's a lot more personal responsibility put onto the student to stay organized. In terms of having the AV classes, it's really a good idea to keep an organized backpack and locker, because they have 4 minutes between classes, and so they want to make sure they know what they're going to their locker to get so that they have the right materials for the class. We have lots of different tools and strategies for that, like color coding or putting a big A on the edge of the binders for A day so you can grab the right things. Even though this school looks really big, all of the 6th grade classes, aside from their electives, are in the same wing. So they're really not going to be like having a hard time to make it to class in 4 minutes and go to their lockers. We encourage students to pack their backpacks the night before to make sure they have everything they need for the day. Make writing in the agenda, writing their homework down and other due dates in the agenda, make that a habit. This idea of taking 10, even if you don't have homework, in some of the subjects like science and math, where there's a lot of material, a lot of facts and dates and information being thrown at the kids in a short period of time, it's a really good idea and proven by research that if you distribute your study practice over a long period of time, it's much more effective than only studying the night before. So we encourage students, even if you don't have homework, to just take 5-10 minutes and look through your notes that you went over today in class, reread it. Also, if a student has history one day, then we'll have science the next day. So if they're assigned history homework on a Wednesday, they may say, oh, no problem, I don't have to do this until Friday. I mean, it's not due till Friday, right, because it's every other day. But we encourage students to do their homework on the night it is assigned. The material is fresher in their mind. It's being proactive. It's not, something could come up Thursday night. So get it done ahead of time and come to class prepared and ready for instruction. It's really important for young people to have routine. It's not a bad word. So, if kids are struggling, I oftentimes will say, what happens when you leave here? What does it look like when you go home? Well, I go home and I play video games for about 3 hours. Then around 8, I might open my agenda and see if I can remember if I have any homework. Well, by that time they're tired, they're not concentrating, they're not fresh. So it's good to have a routine, have a snack after school, have a little relaxation, but then get to that harder homework before you get to the easy homework. And I know that you will support us in that kind of a mentality. This is what that Aspen login looks like. As I said, you're probably used to looking at Aspen for grades, but now there's each class that your child has will have a class page. And you're encouraged to kind of save those as favorites and download them onto your Aspen page so that you can just click onto the 5 or 6 different classes that your child has. And on those pages are great resources if your child needs extra practice. There's games, there's instructions for projects and blended learning activities. There's a calendar for each class. And I see some making pictures. If you want to just relax, this whole website is going to be on our school counseling page on the Grafton Middle School. So if you're having trouble and you're feeling like you're going to miss something, you can just relax and check it out at another time. So I would download your child's class pages. There's study guides on there, all the assignments. So if don't feel like you're getting a straight story from your student about what the assignments are, you can check it out on Aspen. Another thing you can do on Aspen is you can set alerts so that you receive emails for low grades. And if your child is out sick, it's very, very important for you to be able to use Aspen to keep up with what they're missing. Something that we have in place at Grafton Middle School and throughout York County is this system where we target behaviors that we want to reinforce and encourage in our students. And it's a school-wide program where we reward when we see the expectations being accomplished. So we expect academic, integrity and academic rigor. We encourage and expect fun and kindness. We expect leadership. We, expect respect from each child to teachers and to each other. And so when this PBIS program is put in place, what studies have shown is that it reduces disciplinary infractions, it improves the climate of our school, and it gets the kids more academically engaged, and it really just makes the school a nicer place to be. So if you look at the next slide, these are the target behaviors on the left that we're trying to reinforce and encourage. We're trying to encourage a safe and orderly school, always respectful, intellectual, and leadership. So that makes the acronym SAIL, which goes along with our mascot, the Clippers. So when students are sailing well in all these different areas, they earn Clipper Cash. And Clipper Cash is like a token economy, and basically they can turn that in once a week once every 2 weeks. We have a sales store in the cafeteria. So students can earn prizes, they can earn privileges like sitting with whomever you'd like at lunch, or dance tickets, or being a teacher's helper. They can also earn tangible things like candy and toys and prizes like that. On to the nitty-gritty of the core classes that your student will be taking. And we have a representative from the 6th grade math faculty and from the English faculty here to give you more details about the English and math components. But I'll just briefly tell you the core classes are math, and your student will either be taking a class called FOA, which stands for Foundations of Algebra, which is a grade level math course, or Pre-Algebra 6, which is an accelerated advanced class. Your student will either be taking General English or Advanced English. The social studies is U.S. history. It starts at the beginning of our nation's history, like the Native Americans and explorers, and it goes through the Civil War, 1865. Science is a combination of like physics and a little bit of chemistry and weather and those kinds of things. It's not life science, but it's those kinds of things. And they all take PE, of course, every year. And speaking of PE, that is one of the biggest changes for new middle schoolers, is the dressing out part of PE. I know you all had phys ed, or your kids have all had PE in the past, but the dressing out and the going into the locker room and having a locker is a big deal. So Dressing out means that you put on a PE uniform, you use your locker. You have a separate locker from your locker in the hall for your books. You have a PE locker in the locker room. Part of PE grade is whether you dress out every day. Because PE is a fun class, you're not graded on how awesome you are at doing push-ups or playing dodgeball or anything like that. It's basically your cooperation, your dressing out, and those kinds of things. You can keep hygiene supplies and extra clothes in your locker. Nobody else uses the locker when you're not in there. Remember to take your clothes home to be washed on a regular basis, and try and have fun. Because that's a good place to let your adolescent energy out. Okay. At open house, there's going to be more information and the opportunity to buy a uniform. Students need to wear a red t-shirt and blue bottoms, like blue shorts, which they can purchase or they can bring their own. This is what a sample schedule will look like. So remember I said that there's going to be 4 90-minute blocks every day, with the exception of second block, which is almost 2 hours, because we build in a half hour of lunch. So students will go, we start school at 8:05, and they'll go till 9:38 in their first class. That might not be math, this is just a sample schedule. Okay, it could be English, it could be science, it could be history. It sounds like a long time to sit for 90 minutes when you're 11, but our teachers are really good at chunking that time block and having lots of engaging activities. These are middle school teachers. They're not, college professors, they're not high school teachers. They're really, really in tune with what adolescent middle schoolers need and appreciate. So don't worry about that. Second block, as I said, they'll go to second block, and then about halfway through second block, they take a little half-hour break for lunch. So they do eat lunch kind of early, about 10:30, 10:45, and then they go back to second block for the rest of the period. Then they'll do third block and fourth block. Students will have English every day, and they'll have math every day. And they will have science one day and history the next. So they'll never have those 2 classes on the same day. And they will never have PE and their elective on the same day. So those are the other 2 that alternate. There'll be time for questions at the end if I'm giving you way too much information right now. I hope I'm not talking too fast. At this time, I'd like to bring Mr. Neely up. He is our 6th grade math guru, and he's going to talk to you about the differences between the different math options. And he has guest speakers.
Good evening. I'm going to break things up a little bit because everybody thinks math is boring, so I'm going to defeat that myth there. I'm Bob Neely. I'm one of the teachers here in math. I teach pre-algebra. I also teach FOA 6. So anyway, I'm going to talk to you about the math placement. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the tracks of math, and then I'm going to bring 2 of my students up here to come talk to you. So they live it better than I do. So they're students, they can give you the input that maybe your son or daughter is looking for, and just some of the background information. All right, so as Ms. San Lorenzo said, there are 2 math courses. There's FOA 6, which is grade level. That's where most kids are. And then there's pre-algebra 6. All of these standards are new standards, which means that they are now, I'm going to be honest with you, they're more rigorous. And every course is more rigorous, all right? So there's a lot of 7th grade, old 7th grade skills that used to be in 7th grade, now they're in 6th grade. So, and then there's a lot of algebra skills that used to be there, and now they're in pre-algebra. So this year is the first year that they've adopted the new standards, and so therefore there's a lot of change going on. And so anyway, so to talk about pre-algebra 6, we're looking at 6th, 7th, and 8th grade standards. There's a total of 54 SOLs that they will have to learn. It is a very rigorous class. It's a very fast-paced class. And some of the requirements that the county has come up with, it'd be very, very helpful to have an A in math, being one of the top students in terms of in their class. Also, you need a pass advanced score. And as of the last couple of years, the SOLs have become more rigorous and harder to get pass advanced. And also, it's the pace. We hear a lot of times about, I could probably do it if we would slow down a little bit. And so anyway, because this is a class that's designated for 6th, 7th, and 8th, we do go through things really, really quickly. So the student must be able to adjust a lot of times. Also, you need your 5th grade teacher recommendation. The 5th grade teachers are fully aware of what's up here in terms of middle school. And so anyway, so they're going to make the recommendations based on their work habits as well as their SOL scores and their grades. Students, and here's the big difference. Students are expected to have an 80 average or above. That includes first quarter or second quarter. And that's not our school policy, that's the county policy. And that's something new as of this year. Okay? Next slide. All right, so now the tracks. So if you're a FOA 6 student, after taking the SOL, next year there are 2 options that the teacher has to recommend. There is grade level math, which is FOA 7, and then there is pre-algebra 7. And pre-algebra 7 includes just what I just got finished talking about. So a lot of kids that, like for instance, maybe struggled in pre-algebra 6, they will be more ready, more suited for pre-algebra 7 in 7th grade. 1 year makes a whole lot of difference. All right? And then as we progress it from pre-algebra, the expectation is if they remain in the class throughout the year, the expectation is they go to high school algebra. So they'll be doing Algebra 1 in 7th grade. In 7th grade to 8th grade, FOA 7 goes to FOA 8, for pre-algebra 8. If you're in pre-algebra 7, you still need to maintain an 80 average or above. But then you would go to, most likely, you would go to Algebra 1. In terms of 7th grade algebra, your track is for advanced geometry. And so most of the kids that are in algebra do go to advanced geometry. All right? Okay, so I brought some friends along. These are my students, and one of them is in my first block pre-algebra, and the other one is in my second block pre-algebra. And we're going to have a little talk session, okay? So I'm going to hand the mic over to them, and what we've come up with are some similarities and differences in, say, pre-algebra as opposed to, say, 5th grade math, okay? All right, so who's doing this? All right, Krishna, okay. All right, so Krishna, tell me some of the things that you can expect for homework in pre-algebra.
We're going to have homework every day, even on weekends, mostly. But it's worth it because it'll help you further on if you're struggling.
So homework is pretty much every night, including most weekends, not every weekend. Okay? Aspen and OneNote, what is the importance of staying on top of those computer systems?
Well, for OneNote, if you forget your homework at school, or if you're absent, then you can go on OneNote and print out a copy and use the notes on there to have it. And next day you're ready, and you don't get a 0 on the homework.
Never. No, OneNote is something that we link up to the pre-algebra teachers, and a lot of other math teachers link up. So for instance, you can go and get all the homework that you have for the quarter, all the homework and pretty much any extra practice. We put that on there. We put the keys for the parents. That's very helpful. And also we put any extra notes. So if you're absent, that's a really good resource to use. Okay? All right, Krishna, tell me about harder assessments.
Assessments are going to be harder than elementary school assessments and co-op assessments, but you have to use your brain, and they outside the box, because Mr. Lee would do that. So,
I think the educational term is critical thinking, okay? Okay. All right, note-taking.
if you take your notes, then it can help you study and do your homework. Yeah.
We give notes just about every single day on the topic, many examples. Also, we use the notes. We want to encourage the students to use the notes so that, like for instance, if we want to assess them, they're able to use their notes for the classwork, only the classwork. And so it's a really helpful tool. A lot of kids have just decided that they know everything and that they don't need to take notes. We're trying to change that. Okay? Time management. How much time will pre-algebra take?
20 minutes. So if you're just sitting there doing nothing and you're done with your classwork, then you can do other things like homework and study for future quizzes and tests. Make it the best of your time.
Turning this into a comedy show. All right, now, we've also polled some students in the past, and we've come up with some advice to rising fifth graders that are possibly thinking about pre-algebra. And Aaron's going to help us with that. So Aaron, talk to us about the first bit of advice.
Okay, so you should already know what math you learned in fifth grade because it's really helpful in sixth grade for the stuff you're going to learn in pre-algebra. And it's really helpful.
So up there it says fractions and decimals. That's very helpful to know. Also, if you can get a head start, if you think that you're going to be in pre-algebra, integers are super important. If you can get a head start on integers, advantage you. Okay? Talk to us about organization.
Okay, in pre-algebra, you have to be really organized if you aren't already because sometimes if you lose something because you're not organized, it could affect your grade and lower it if it's something that's graded, and that's really important.
Like not put your name on paper, lose papers, and so forth and so on. Ask for help. There's going to be times that they're going to need some help with so many skills and more complex skills. They're going to need help, and so it's really important that they stay. Aaron, I'm going to do this one. So it's very important that students are very, very engaged with the lesson. They ask for help. They go home, get help if they need. If they bring their questions, the next class period. The class moves very, very quickly. All right. The next part is willing to work beyond the course requirements. What does that mean?
So, okay. Sometimes it's better if you're dedicated to what you're doing because it helps out. It makes the subject easier and it's really helpful.
Many of the students in pre-algebra go home and they do extra math. We have a lot of students that have just a natural love for math and they want to learn even more than what's outside the classroom. We want to foster that environment. And then lastly, we are going to give you extra practice if you need it. We have endless resources to do so. So it's a class that not only happens inside the walls of the classroom, but it happens outside. And so anyway, it's a very, very rigorous class. It's been a big adjustment this year. So anyway, I want to thank these two for helping me. I put them on the spot, and they reacted very well. I want to turn it over to Ms. Scott, who's going to talk about English.
You'll have to bear with me while I deal with this little bit of a culture English 6 and Advanced English 6. And that gets confusing. That gets confusing for the families on what goes into the recommendations. It also gets confusing for the students on what their expectations are. So we'll start from top level, and then we'll end with me giving you some examples of responses from my English class and responses from my Advanced English class when it comes to us doing the same novel study. And I think that will help. So the first thing you need is a teacher recommendation from the previous grade. Your student's 5th grade teacher right now knows them well, knows their level of thinking when it comes to their ability to articulate and also to infer information that is not explicitly there. So that recommendation will come from your 5th grade teacher. Secondly, teachers always consider work ethic and your scores. But that's not the only thing that they consider. There are some students in my English class who have very high test scores and give great answers. It's always on point. And their contribution in the class is phenomenal. We would really miss some of those students who had very high SOL scores in my English 6 class. But they're in my English 6 class. They're not in the Advanced English class. And when I give you some examples later, you'll see a little bit of the difference there. The other thing that's considered is this commitment to the summer assignment. In York County, all of the students need to have a summer reading assignment. The difference between the summer reading assignment in English 6 compared to Advanced English 6 is the Advanced English 6 novel is determined for you. You are told which book you need to read, and you're given a very specific assignment and very specific questions to answer with that novel. In English 6, you can choose your novel from a recommended list or from a decision that you've made with your child. And 2 weeks after school starts, then you will do an in-class classwork assignment with it. And it'll be guided through the class instead of being done independently over the summer and turned in on the first day, where that's the expectation for the Advanced English class. Okay, so is that first difference clear between in the summer assignment? Okay. Then this next slide here, the Advanced English class is more reading and writing intensive. So it starts with that summer assignment. They're expected to read that novel on their own. They're expected to write their responses on their own. And in the composition of those assignments, it needs to be great grammar mechanics, complete sentences, complete thoughts, and supporting detail included in those responses. That indicates that they have a higher level of reasoning when they're